Russian state TV goes behind Putin's back and criticizes the invasion. So we're going to talk just a bit about that because it might be time for the people to start rising up against Putin as well. In other news, inflation hits a 40-year high at 7.9%. 7.9%. That is a tax on the poor on one thing, but yeah, that's going to hit your pocketbooks before it hits the pocketbooks of politicians. So we'll talk about that and what's going on with that. A Liz Cheney challenger is endorsed by House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy, and Jussie Smollett gets sentenced. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, happy Friday, Edheads. My name is Jay Edgar, and welcome to Contemporary. We have got a lot of stuff to get to today. I don't know if we're going to get through it all. We're going to try. A lot of stuff that's going on here, some stuff to talk about, some stuff to go over, and a couple of announcements that are coming up here that those of you who are in the inner circle know, because, hey, as of right now, we have an inner circle show. We hope to expand this more. And by the way, go tell some of your friends to get in here. Let them have the live chat read aloud today, because that's what we're going to do today. Especially once we get to the inflation segment, which we're going to fly through the Ukrainian stuff today and the finance stuff today, so we can get into the inflation segment. But I have written the names down of everybody who's chatted in the live chat this week. It's all here, so I can say a special thank you. Plus, where my fountain pen dried up a little bit off the top. That's one of the disadvantages to them, is that if you leave the cap up of them, they don't get ink flow up to the top anymore. What's in there dries out, and sometimes you gotta do a little scribble there to get everything flowing again. But I'm gonna say thank you to everybody. Plus, we're gonna go through the live chat today as well. So if your comment is sufficiently stupid, bigoted, hateful, or otherwise, it might get read on the air because it will raise the intellectual level of this program. And thus, we need to go talk about it. I want to hear what you guys have to say about the inflation today, especially. I'm really glad that the inflation report dropped yesterday, so that we can have this up here. And like I said, we're going to fly through the Ukrainian stuff because that is immediately afterwards. And in fact, I've got to transition from inflation into the Ukraine stuff. So we're going to fly through that because that's what I really want to spend some time on, is the inflation, what this is doing and how this is affecting you. Let's get the live chat up here so I can see what you guys are saying already. So let's get in here, let's get started, and let's go, dude. We got a God Morgan. Who the hell is Morgan, and why the hell is she a god? Yeah, we got to get to it here. So yeah, get all your friends in here too, because this all affects them as well. Let's see, can we get to 20 today? 20 concurrent chatters at one point. I'll be watching the number. Can we get to 20? Can we do it? All right. Let's get started though. But before we do, this and an announcement. So head on over, check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Go check out the Daily Ignoramus and the new album that's out by Stephen Ignoramus that dropped yesterday, I believe, for the public. I've already heard it because, well, I'm in the inner circle. I'd already heard most of the songs, and hearing the way that it got mixed out and done up professionally was awesome, by the way. So go and check that out. Also, check out the Porch Boys, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, a new upcoming project with Britt and Sean Hickman, and the R-Rated Conservative. Go check out all those shows as well. It's going to be a great time. Once the website is back up, we will have a place for all 6 of those creators, plus, or 5 of those creators, plus me, a new creator coming on, and we'll have a place for writers. So if you know any writers, anybody that wants to get in, do some freelance to start off with, to get everything going here. Once we get open, this will become a paying gig. That's what we want to do, and your articles will be paid out by the ad revenue you generate. So I've already been talking to Bobby Joe to how to get that to work. And speaking of Bobby Joe, announcement that's coming up on this. So if you guys want to come in here and donate to us, the extension is givesendgo.com/turnsofpages101. You guys will be in here on the inner circle because you can see my actual government name right now. And I just, right before I got started here, I talked to Brian Nichols. And I'm going to be doing a name docs on Brian Nichols' show, which again, all of you guys in the inner circle have already seen it, so you guys already know what it is, but I really can't promote this out until I get a name docs out there. So, yep, my real name is going to be coming out there for everybody, because it's the only way that I can use Give, Send, Go, because they say funds received by insert government name here. So, it's what I got to do. Plus, I'm being a businessman. I'm starting this back out. You guys can still call me J. Edgar. I still use that name, and I use that for everything else, but they've got to have a first and last name on there. It's their policy. I got the email from them yesterday because I requested it. I said, hey, is there something we can do about this for a name that I haven't used in 13 years? You know, most of the people who read this are going to think this is a fucking scam because it's got J. Edgar on here. They know it's J. Edgar's website, but, I mean, who is this government name here person that's on here? Who am I donating to? So, well, that's what they're going to see off of that. So that's what we're going to do right now. That's how we're going to get started with that. And it's probably going to be early April when I get the name docs, but as soon as that episode airs on the Brian Nichols show, then we're going to head out there and we're going to start promoting this hard because we want to get Bobby Joe paid. Number one, first and foremost, off the top, we definitely want to go get her paid because she's really cool. We like what she does, and I've seen some of the stuff. I've seen her portfolio. She does great. So that's going to be coming up here, but definitely go check that out. givesendgo.com/turnsofpages101. But that's what we do. All right, let's get into it. Starting with the Dow. The Dow dropped on the inflation report, but it seems to be trying to claw back right now. The futures are up about 400 points. It dropped off yesterday, but climbed back, ending at 112.18 down to 33,174.07. That's where we're at right now, about 1/3% down throughout the day. Bitcoin took a little bit of a jump as we looked at what the inflation report was. I'm not surprised that a bunch of people went out and bought a bunch of Bitcoin yesterday. It tumbled a little bit off the top here as people started to realize what their tax is, because inflation is a tax on the poor. But as they started to realize that they can't trust U.S. currency, they started to jump up a little bit further. And yes, I understand how some of you guys feel about cryptocurrencies in general. Yes, I understand you should be in more solid assets than that. But again, it's one of those things where if you have a little bit of it and you want to go donate to a Ukrainian war effort, or a charity overseas, Doctors Without Borders or something else like that, I mean, at some point, do you send them gold or do you send them a little bit of Bitcoin? It's not advisable to have a lot of money into Bitcoin, but enough that you can buy and sell and trade across borders. Just a little bit there, a little bit of a buffer, a little bit of backup, a little bit of play money is what I would say Bitcoin is good for. And of course, I don't have any because I think it glows, but one of the things you can look at there, though, is Shiba Inu, Ethereum, Dogecoin. That's another good one to have, especially if you got in on the bottom of that, but that's what we see coming off of that. Looking at your scrap metal prices, your current scrap metal prices are all in the green on the averages. Looking in at the individuals, brass shells are down, otherwise everything in copper is up. Steel is all in the green right now. Aluminum siding is up. Aluminum copper fin is down. Radiators are down. Cans are up. Sheet aluminum is down. Rims are down. Electric motors are down. Ballasts are down. Lead is down. Car and truck batteries are up. Catalytic converters are all up. Compressors are up. Alternators are up. Carbide is up. Hard drives are up. Motherboards are up, but power supplies, low-grade boards, and PC towers are all down. So that's what we see in the metal plays that we look at every day. Let's see what IBD has to say. Once in a year, free access, March 7th through the 13th. Nope, we're not doing that. But let's see what they have to say here. Dow futures jump as Putin sees positive shift in Ukraine talks. Rivian DocuSign dive from Ed Carson. Dow futures rose strongly Friday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures jumping as President Putin reported some positive shifts in Ukraine talks, but futures slowly paired some of those gains. Putin's comments came in a meeting with his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, adding that talks continued practically on a daily basis, but they come after high-level Russia-Ukraine talks appear to go nowhere on Thursday. Russia has eased some of its demand as the Ukraine invasion has been much tougher than Putin expected, while sanctions versus Russia are already taking a toll. Meanwhile, Russia's Ukraine invasion continues. Forces are still losing a lot of troops and equipment. It continues to shell and bomb Ukrainian cities, causing heavy civilian casualties. That shelling is now targeting some western cities, largely spared up till now. Russia claims of Ukrainian research into dirty nuclear bombs and bioweapons raise concerns that Putin may attempt a false flag operation in the Ukraine or Russia. Let me drop that just a little bit. It's a little bit loud. Come on. The slider bar is so tiny on YouTube. The stock market rally closed well off lows Thursday, holding the bulk of Wednesday's big gains. Crude oil prices reversed lower while Treasury yields continue to rebound with inflation at a 40-year high. On the earnings, Tesla rival Rivian reported weaker than expected fourth quarter earnings results. The EV pickup maker reported a big loss in slim revenue, while warning that supply chain woes still persist. And again, I do find that a little bit funny looking in at cause I don't see the Amazon vans out nearly as much as I was during the springtime. That's one thing to point out for sure. I used to see at least one Amazon van a day. I almost never see Amazon vans anymore, so that's one thing to watch with that. But that's their big customer. Amazon and Ford came together to make the vans for Amazon. It seems like only Amazon is buying them. So as of right now, we'll see what happens with that. Rivian stock sold off hard overnight after skidding to a record low in Thursday's session. As for Tesla, shares fell from key resistance and back below its 200-day line. Oracle missed earnings views while the software giant's revenue was in line. Oracle stock fell slightly early Thursday. DocuSign met on EPS and beat on sales, but its fiscal 2023 revenue guidance fell short. But DocuSign stock, which crashed at 42% after the prior earnings report, plunged in extended trade. Ulta Beauty beat views and announced a new $2 billion Ulta stock buyback. Ulta stock rose slightly in the overnight action, near an early entry after retaking the 50-day line Thursday and closing on a trend line. Meanwhile, Costco Wholesale, Regeneron, and J.B. Hunt Transport Services are rebounding from key levels and not far from possible buy points. Tesla is on the IBD leaderboard, with Costco stock joining just the leaderboard watch list on Thursday. Costco, Regeneron, and J.B. Hunt are on the IBD 50. Regeneron was Thursday's IBD 50 stock to watch. On the futures, Dow futures rose 0.8% versus fair value, backing off highs as Putin's positive shifts comments first hit. S&P 500 futures climbed 0.9%, NASDAQ futures advanced 1.2%. DocuSign stock is on the NASDAQ 100. Crude oil futures edged higher, slashing overnight gains following Putin's Ukraine comments. EU announced a pause in Iran nuclear talks due to external factors, likely referring to Russia's Ukraine invasion in some way, which, again, is probably to be expected. I've actually thought that they had already made the document signed, so good on them for that, because, hey, if you think that Russia is a despot, look over at Iran and think about the fact that the person you're calling a despot is helping you to deal with a country that might actually be despotic. Seems like a conflict of interest to me. Gold fell more than 1%, which is odd, especially with inflation. I thought that people would be jumping into that. The 10-year Treasury yield was flat at 2.01%. Oof. After being below 2% prior to Putin's comments. The Hong Kong Tech Index saw huge losses Friday amid renewed U.S. delisting fears. The SEC on Thursday identified 5 U.S.-listed Chinese stocks that it could delist eventually if they don't comply with U.S. auditing laws. However, U.S.-listed China stocks are generally rising modestly Friday morning after Thursday tumbles. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. But that's what we see off of that. But let's grab one from CNBC. Then we are going to get into the big news of the day. Dow futures jumped 400 points on hope there will be progress in Russia-Ukraine ceasefire talks from Maggie Fitzgerald and Samantha Subin. Stock futures rose ahead of Friday's session following a report that the ceasefire talks could be gaining traction between Russia and Ukraine. Putin said that certain positive shifts have occurred in the talks. The report coincided with the sharp acceleration in futures, with the Dow up 401 points or 1.2%, the S&P rising 1.4%, and the Nasdaq jumping some 1.7%. This, of course, happening overnight during the late night markets trading, but as we saw with the with the IBD, that has backed off some. The S&P's 12% decline from its peak suggests that much of the froth has been taken out, said Savita Subramanian, equity and giant strategist at Bank of America Securities. Stocks are likely pricing in the geopolitical shock, where the S&P fell 9% from peak to trough since Russia-Ukraine headlines in early February, similar to a 7.8% fall in prior macro geopolitical events. The moves came despite another day of higher energy prices, though they were well off their highs following in the report on Putin's comments. West Texas Intermediate crude, the U.S. benchmark, rose 1.4% to 107.46, while International Standard Brent crude moved 1.6% higher to 111.04, which is a relief from what we saw from the 130s that we were seeing just a week ago. But regardless, this is still going to be hurting, and this is not what we were seeing under the Trump admin. And we're going to talk about that down further in the show too, because it's looking like there might be an equilibrium. Unfortunately, the equilibrium might be somewhere around the upper $3 range, close to $4. Metal prices, except for copper, fell sharply. That's not what we saw from the averages. Palladium tumbled 4% to $28.03.50 an ounce. Agricultural commodity prices turned mixed, and bond yields were mostly higher, though only slightly. Tensions continue to heat up on the Ukraine situation, with Biden expected to call for an end to Russia's status as a preferred trade partner. Got that article. According to Bloomberg News report, also Congress passed a funding bill that includes $14 billion worth of Ukrainian aid. So that's what we're seeing here on the markets. Anything else that I see from this is a review. That's what's happening. Make sure that your Dow and your 401k are adjusted properly. Let's get into the major news of the day, and we're going to start with one from the B, just because I think we need to laugh a little bit to start off with here. Carter says he's finally hopeful that he won't be the worst presidential failure in his lifetime. As always with the B, no author given. In rare interviews with the media from his tiny dollhouse living room, former President Jimmy Carter expressed hope that he will no longer be considered the worst presidential failure in his lifetime. "I've been seen as one of the worst modern presidents for a long time," said Carter, "but something tells me my luck is about to change. I'm not sure what it is, really, but the last few months or so have got me thinking I'll no longer be considered in last place, and that's a great feeling." Carter didn't name names or say why he feels that way, only that it feels good to finally be second to last place. Some have suggested Biden may now be considered for the worst president due to unspeakable damages his policies have done to the economy, the Middle East, and people's hopes for the future. So, there you go. That's a fun one. That's a fun way to look at this here. As always, what I say with Carter. Carter, horrible president, terrible president, great guy. I wish I had enough time and enough assets to come out and give as much to charity as Jimmy Carter has. I wish that I could just go out and build houses for people. I'd like to have my own first, but I wish that I could just go out and do that. Build houses for people, help people. Help people that are homeless. Help ease some of the homelessness crisis. Get them an asset. And, of course, be able to live forever, or at least until the last skinny worm on Earth, is eradicated. Man, it would be nice to be Carter post-presidency, but yeah, his presidency sucked. Congratulations, President Carter. All right, let's start off the real news today with some of our friends over here at NPR. Russian strikes hit western Ukraine as offensive widens. This comes to NPR from the Associated Press, but remember, with NPR, you need to make sure that you donate to them, even if they have to buy the article from the Associated Press. They need your money. I mean our money, comrade, because The government taxpayer subsidy is not enough to hold them up, and they need our money, comrades. So let's make sure that we get this out there to them. Hit that red donate button, and remember, never printing reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what it is that they have to say. Russia's strikes hit airports near western Ukraine on Friday as the military offensive widened and invading troops kept up pressure on the capital Kiev at the besieged port city of Mariupol. The airstrikes on the Lusk military airfield left 2 Ukrainian servicemen dead and 6 people wounded, according to the head of the surrounding Volyn region, Yuri Polyayko. Anybody? Pohulyayko. I think that's going to be Polyayko. That's what we're going to do. The airstrikes also targeted an airport near Ivano-Frankivsk, where residents were ordered to shelters after an air raid alert, Mayor Ruslan Martsinkiev said. New satellite photos, meanwhile, appeared to show a massive convoy outside the Ukrainian capital had fanned out into towns and forests near Kiev, with artillery pieces raised for firing in another potentially ominous movement. Photos emerged amid more international efforts to isolate and sanction Russia, particularly after a deadly airstrike on a maternity hospital in the port city of Mariupol that Western Ukrainian officials decried as a war crime. Yeah, once again, not enough information for me to make a judgment on that. Authorities announced plans for several evacuation and humanitarian aid delivery routes with the support of the Red Cross. Their top priority is to free people struggling to flee Mariupol. The U.S. and other nations were poised later Friday to announce the revocation of Russia's most favored nation trade status, which would allow higher tariffs to be imposed on some Russian imports. I thought we were done with Russian imports. I thought that was the announcement of the speech that Biden made. Oh, no. I'm sorry, no. The rich aren't going to go without their nesting dolls, their Fabergé eggs, and all the other fancy stuff that they get from Russia. That's just for you poor people. Unbowed by the sanctions, Russia kept up its bombardment of the besieged southern seaport of Mariupol, while Kiev braced for the onslaught, its major boasting that the capital had become practically a fortress protected by armed civilians. And yet your government wants to disarm you. 3 Russian airstrikes also hit the eastern industrial city of Dnipro on early Friday, killing at least 1 person, according to the Interior Minister, Anton Heroshenko. Meanwhile, Russian forces were pushing towards Kiev from the northwest and east, but were repulsed from Chernihiv as Ukrainian fighters regained control of Baklanova Muravika, the general staff of Ukraine's armed forces said in a statement. Yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot left of the Ukraine that's not touched by Russia if this keeps going and dragging out for much longer. And really, honestly, when you do a land size comparison, I mean, it's like Rhode Island to Massachusetts, Ukraine versus Russia. And even while a very small portion of Russia is populated, they can still just keep pulling bodies out. Hey, you in the factory, grab a gun, you're going to Ukraine. You, in the auto sales place, grab a gun, you're going to the Ukraine. So they're going to keep hammering. It's kind of unclear how many people Putin's willing to lose after this, but on the other end of that, he is starting to feel some of the pain off of this. So maybe forever, maybe it could be over soon. We don't know. I don't know, and I'll be the first to admit it. I never thought this was going to happen. I'll be the first one to admit that. I thought this was just going to be a bluster to try to get Biden to blink, to get him out on the world stage, and possibly to work with Zelensky to come in and say, okay, Zelensky, you come in here. Talk to me. I need documents about Hunter Biden. You give to me? Yes? You give to me, I leave country alone. So that's what we see off of that. From the New York Post, Russian troops insist to Ukrainians that real target of war is USA inside of the Ukraine, from Holly McKay. Real wartime propaganda? That I have no idea. Russian troops insisted that their real target is the US, not the Ukraine, after they opened fire on a Ukrainian man trying to flee his war-torn town. The traumatized resident told the Post. So I'm guessing they didn't kill him. Or this was a separate man, one of the two. We are not at war with Ukraine and Ukrainians, but at war with USA, inside Ukraine, the 55-year-old Igor Sitalo said. Russian soldiers told him after they shot at him. Sitalo was fleeing his hometown of Hostomel, a city of 16,000, with his German shepherd, Ralph, on Sunday, when a bullet struck his hand, grazed his head, and killed his canine companion. F in the chat! They killed the dog! What the fuck? Are they the ATF here? Don't kill the dog, dude! F in the chat for the dog. A doctor tried to save him, Sitalo told the Post, between sobs and a medical attempt near Kiev. But he passed. He would have been 8 years old this month. F in the chat, dude. Wow. After the invading soldiers confronted Sitalo, an aviation engineer, at the scene and checked his identification documents, they apparently tried to console him by explaining their real enemy is the US. Despite the close call, Sitalo, who had bloody bandages wrapped around his head and left arm, said his friends in Russia don't believe that soldiers from the country are really committing such atrocities. He sent them photos of his bullet wounds, but still, they do not believe me, he said bitterly. There's the dog. He looked like he was a good dog. They do not believe I am injured. They do not believe Russians are doing these things, he continued. In the post in one of our aviation groups on Facebook, he wrote, I write, brother Russians, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? The engineer, who works for U.S. tech companies, managed to drive his bullet-riddled car to the town of Worzel, where he waited for days for a safe evacuation passage to emerge on Wednesday. He still has no idea how he'll reach his wife and children, and is heartbroken over the death of his dog. He said, Sitalo is now waiting at a transition point with hundreds of other evacuees in a muddy field in Bilorod. Man, these Cyrillic names. Bilohorodka, a small village around 14 miles west of Kiev. On Wednesday, convoys brought around 800 civilians, mainly from the hard-hit towns of Irpin, Bucha, Borzel, and Hostomel. Here, the fleeing Ukrainians can receive medical care and food and take shelter amid frigid weather while planning where to go next. So, I don't know, basically, because I don't have U.S. intelligence, I don't have access to the coast, but I don't know how much U.S. involvement is going on here, whether it's U.S. soldiers or, like in this guy's case, a U.S. tech company that he's working for. I don't know anything about that or what's happening with that, but apparently that seems to be what the enemy is the United States inside of the Ukraine. Allegedly. And again, a lot of this stuff I am taking with a grain of salt because a lot of this seems to be wartime propaganda. And an effort to try to get the U.S. pulled back into this. Let's grab one from The Hill. This was interesting to me. From The Hill, Facebook, Instagram to allow calls for violence against Russians temporarily. From Rebecca Klar. Facebook and Instagram will temporarily allow users in some countries to call for violence against Russians and Russian soldiers within the context of the war in the Ukraine. A company spokesperson confirmed Thursday a substantial shift to their rules on hate speech and violence and incitement. Which basically tells me, again, wartime propaganda. Hey, this is our enemy and we need to demonize them. No matter what, that would take away their humanity. Hey, you can threaten violence against them. That sounds just as propagandistic as what we saw with the Yellow Star and all the German propaganda in the 1930s. Take away their humanity first. And then you can exterminate them. as a result of... Oh, that's Andy Stone. I thought that was going to be Zuckerberg, and I had to go in and do my Zuckerberg accent. As a result of Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have temporarily made allowances for some sorts of political expression that would normally violate our rules, like violent speech such as death to the Russian invaders. We still won't allow credible calls for violence against Russian civilians, Meta spokesperson Andy Stone said in a statement. No, you're just going to allow the people to whip themselves up into a frenzy that, again, even before the internet, sent the people into Holocaust-like rage. Good job! The update was first reported by Reuters. Yeah, this doesn't ever end badly when you do something like this. I mean, look at what we see off of Twitter with all the calls for the extermination of the GOP, imprison all the GOP. And there are people that actually believe that rounding up all the GOP, putting them in camps, would be a good idea. You saw it with the vaccine mandate stuff. You saw it with that fucking asshole Robert Reich, which we'll be talking about that later on too. Healthcare is a human right. Except unless, of course, you are the evil unvaccinated. And now he's calling once again for universal health care for everybody. So we'll talk about that. Kamala Harris is in the Ukraine right now. Zelensky rips Harris for laughter, says it would be a tragedy if she's ever president. From Emily Crane and Ben Kesslin. It may be a tragedy, but given the age and the dementia, it might be an inevitability. We got the authors already. Vice President Harris was slammed on Thursday for breaking into an inappropriate laughter after she was asked whether the U.S. will take in Ukrainian refugees, leading Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky's former press secretary to say it would be a tragedy if she ever became president. The awkward moment took place during a press conference with Harris and Poland President Andrzej. I don't know. You've got a 7-letter name and only 2 of them are vowels. I'm going to go with Andrzej Duda in Warsaw. The 2 leaders had been asked about the U.S. accepting Ukrainian refugees or otherwise easing pressure on Poland's strained humanitarian resources. When the reporter stopped speaking, Harris and Duda looked at each other as if each expected the other to respond first. Okay, Harris finally said, drawing a chuckle from Duda and the assembled reporters. A friend in need is a friend indeed, the Veep added before laughing loudly at her own line. After the merriment died down, Duda confirmed that he had asked Harris to help speed up the consular process to Ukrainian refugees with family in the U.S. could stay with them. Critics lined up to hammer the vice president on Twitter, saying the topic was no laughing matter. Is there a video of her laughing like this? No, of course not. It would be a tragedy if this woman won the presidency. Iluia Mandel, the former Zelensky spokesperson, said in a quote tweet responding to the video of the interaction. She later deleted the post after backlash. Only Harris would find it appropriate to laugh when talking about the topic of Ukrainian refugees, tweeted Benny Johnson of the conservative group Turning Point USA. Let me see if I can find the video, because I am curious about this now. And I know I can find Benny Johnson. Where are you? DeSantis. No, I want to talk about Harris. But all this page is right now Smollett and DeSantis. Okay, apparently we're not going to get that kind of video. That's lame. Alright, let's keep going. Kamala Harris has been very consistent during her live remarks with Poland's leader, said former Donald Trump campaign aide George Snuffleupagus. She's awkwardly laughing. Again, discussing refugees is no laughing matter. Why she laughs, this is deranged. Yeah, but again, she has no idea. I mean, first and foremost, she's evil. She laughs about the fact that she put several people in for minor drug offenses. She laughs about that. She laughs about possibly taking over the White House. She laughs over all kinds of inappropriate things. But that's what we see off of that. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire. Another Afghanistan, but even worse. Russia State TV ignores Putin's threats, broadcasts criticism of the invasion. From Hank Berrien. On Thursday night, in a surprising turn of events, two guests on the vastly popular Russian State TV show openly criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of the Ukraine. Appearing on An Evening with Vladimir Soloviev, academic Semyon Bagdasarov, and filmmaker Karen Shakhnazarov criticized the invasion. The pair spoke out despite the Russian government last week passing laws that threaten 15 years in jail for anyone publishing fake news about the war, though the definition of fake is set by the Russian government itself, the Daily Mail reported. Shakhnazarov said bluntly, the Ukraine situation paints a horrifying picture and needs to be understood that it's playing a huge role in our collective morality. It seems everything is now how we'd like to see it. Basically, in this instance, most important thing in scenario is to stop military action. Bagdasarov added, do we need to get into another Afghanistan? But even worse, there are more people and they're more advanced in their handling of weapons. Yeah, that's probably not going to go over well. That is probably not going to go over well with the Russian people, so Godspeed to those people. Good luck. But it does show, I mean, what we saw at the very beginning of this, at the beginning of the invasion, just a few weeks ago. Hell, the Ukrainians were showing us up. The Ukrainians were absolutely showing us up on protest. They got more people out there. This is not popular with the Ukrainian people. Now, when you've got a dictator as your president, it really doesn't matter what's popular. But this is, no matter what the reasoning is, and again, I'm going to say that there's probably some dissemination between what the actual reasoning is and what the mainstream media is telling you, what we're reading here. There's probably some big differences going on there. But with that being said, this is still unpopular with everybody. So we'll see what happens with that. Let's grab another one here from our friends over at NPR. Video analysis reveals Russian attack on Ukrainian nuclear plant veered near disaster. This is heard on Morning Edition, so we might just listen to this one here. From Jeff Brumfield, Meredith Rizzo, Ten Lee, and Allison Hurt. And remember, still, they need our money, comrade, so hit that donate button because NPR, the taxpayer money they get, is not enough for them. Never printing reality, National Progressive Radio. There is the map, by the way. The Unit 1 reactor, the Unit 6 transformer, security camera, admin building, elevated walkway, the training center, and the power line. So, if I remember correctly, it was Unit 6 that got hit. So let's see what it is that what they have to say here. Last week's assault by Russian forces on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant was far more dangerous than initial assessment suggested, according to an analysis by NPR of video and photographs of the attack and its aftermath. A thorough review of 4-hour, 21-minute security camera video of the attack reveals Russian forces repeatedly fired heavy weapons in the direction of the plant's massive reactor building, which housed dangerous nuclear fuel. Photos show that an admin building directly in front of the reactor complex was shredded by Russian fire. And a video from inside the plant shows damage in a possible Russian shell that landed less than 250 feet from the Unit 2 reactor building. So that's probably going to be this one, Unit 2. The security camera footage also shows Russian troops haphazardly firing rocket-propelled grenades in the main administration building at the plant and turning away Ukrainian firefighters even as a fire raged out of control at a nearby training building. The evidence stands in stark contrast to early comments by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which, while acknowledging the seriousness of the assault, emphasized that the action took place away from the reactors. In a news conference immediately after the attack, IAEA Director General Rafael Mariano Grossi made reference to only a single projectile hitting the training building adjacent to the reactor complex. All the safety systems of the 6 reactors at the plant were not affected at all, Grossi told reporters at the March 4th briefing. In fact, the training building took multiple strikes, and it was hardly the only part of the site to take fire from Russian forces. The security footage claims by Ukraine's nuclear regulator of damage at 3 other locations. The Unit 1 reactor building, the transformer at the Unit 6 reactor, had spent fuel pad, which is used to store nuclear waste. It also shows ordnance striking a high-voltage line outside the plant. The IAEA says 2 such lines were damaged in the attack, which, according to this, and again, I don't know necessarily how the nuclear power plant works. I know how nuclear power itself works. But as far as the plant works, apparently they need external energy, in spite of the fact that they're generating electricity. They need external electricity to run the coolant lines. I don't necessarily understand that. Or that's just how they have everything set up. The video is very disturbing, said Edwin Lyman, Director of Nuclear Power Safety at the Union of Concerned Scientists. While the types of reactors used for the plant are far safer than the one that exploded in Chernobyl in '86, the Russian attack could have triggered a meltdown similar to the kind that struck Fukushima in 2011, he warns. So, again, just the carnage off of this. And while I understand that we're not going to see an explosion like the mainstream media wants to tell you this, I can still respect and understand the fact that you maybe shouldn't be letting spent fuel get exposed to the rest of the world. I think that would be a bad thing. But that's what we see off of that. From the New York Post. Fuming Putin fires generals over invasion losses, says Ukraine. From Evan Simko Bednarski. It appears that the left still can't meme. Enraged Russian President Vladimir Putin has gone on a tear, firing as many as 8 generals over Moscow's military losses in the invasion of Ukraine, Kiev's defense chief claims. Ukraine Defense Secretary Alexei Danilov made the claim on Ukrainian TV Wednesday, according to the newspaper Ukrainska Pravda. The enemy had about 8 generals removed from their posts because they did not complete the task. New ones have been appointed, Danilov said. We clearly understand what is happening in Russian Federation, he added. What's more, I can tell they are desperate. The claims by Danilov come amid other indications that all is not well in Moscow. A March 1st report from independent Russian journalist Farida Rustamova claimed that Kremlin insiders were privately declaring the invasion a clusterfuck. That is a scientific term. There is the map of the invasion thus far. The report quoted one high-level source as casting doubt on Putin's state of mind. He is in a state of being offended and insulted, said the source, described as a good acquaintance of the Russian leader. It's paranoia that has reached point of absurdity. While Putin is busy firing Russian generals, Ukrainians have been hard at work killing them. Allegedly. Again, a lot of what we're seeing here is fog of war and wartime propaganda. And just based on what I've seen from the mainstream media over the past 3 years, I think there's some truth to it, but they're not telling us the whole truth. From the Hill. GOP senators grill intel chief for not sending fighter jets to Ukraine. The Warhawks are back. Let's listen to Senator Portman here.
It's a win for Ukraine because it's what they want and need, and it's a win for Poland because over time it would upgrade their defense capabilities. And yet the administration is blocking it. It makes no sense. The administration just told us that they think Ukraine needs other things more and would be more effective in the battlefield. Well, in theory, that means that you have the United States government deciding what the military strategy is for Ukraine, because Ukraine wants the planes. They've made a decision. Second, we have heard that the administration thinks that's provocative. Well, more efficient and effective weapons would be even more provocative, and yet they want to provide those. So the logic doesn't make any sense. We need to provide these planes and provide them now.
The only reason he is doing this is because it is kind of a
God damn it. All right. That's what we see off of that. So let's start the article over. Republican senators grilled intelligence officials on Thursday for not supporting Poland's plan to send fighter jets into the Ukraine, claiming the U.S. was bowing to threats from Russian President Vladimir Putin. Well, here's the issue with this, and this is part of the reason that I can't be a Republican. Because they're calling for this war hawk, warmongering bullshit. Now, I can say, I don't know that I would, in the situation, bow to Putin necessarily, but I know that with a country that has one of the biggest nuclear stockpiles in the world, I'd at least have a couple second thoughts about it. I'd have one or two thoughts about it. As Senate Intelligence Committee hearing on global threats, Senator Tom Cotton blasted U.S. officials for failing to help Poland, which on Tuesday offered to send MiG-29 fighter jets to a base in Germany for deployment to the Ukraine, with the U.S. then providing fighter jets to Poland to resupply its military. Well, here's the thing, Poland. You are still free to send those jets over there. I understand that you feel the need to have Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and Raytheon go back and resupply you so they can go back and pad the pockets of your favorite senators, the ones that you own in this country. But you're free to go send those planes over there without the U.S. help. But we need to resupply ourselves because Russia might attack us. Well, that's the point that you have to think about if you want to get involved in this conflict. And yes, I completely disagree with the fact that we're sending the missiles over there too. I think that's escalatory too. Although I do want to remind the people of Russia of that nice big area called Washington, D.C. in the far southwest part of this country. Right above Mexico, very far in the southwest. There's a major fault line there. You'll know it when you see it. Great big city, major fault line right near it. That's Washington, D.C. That's where the president is. Cotton asked why Putin might be A-okay with us transferring missiles. I'm sure he's not. That could turn tanks into burning piles of rubbish, or shoot their jets out of the sky, yet transferring tactical aircraft is considered unacceptable. Ukraine has begged NATO for fighter jets as it fights off a brutal Russian invasion on the ground and in the air, pleas that have won limited support in Washington over escalation fears. After Poland's offer on Tuesday, Lloyd Austin told officials that he does not support the transfer of the MiG-29 jets at this time because it was high risk, according to his press secretary. Lieutenant General Scott Barrier, director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, reported to lawmakers Thursday that there was an escalation ladder and Putin would view the transfer of fighter jets to Ukraine as an escalation. Absolutely. And again, if Poland wants to come back and do this, they can fuck around and fight out at this point. But they don't need to have the US's blessing to go back and do this. They really don't. But we'll see what happens with that. Pressure mounts on the U.S. and Western allies to help Ukraine. Again, this one from our... Yeah, there's no content here. Never mind, we're going to skip that one. They were shooting civilians. Ukraine refugees saw abuses. From Rafal Niedzelsky. As more than 2 million refugees from the Ukraine began to scatter throughout Europe and beyond, some are carrying valuable witness evidence to build a case for potential war crimes. More and more, the people who are turning up at the border crossing are survivors who have fled some of the cities hardest hit by Russian forces. It was very eerie, said Ihor Dikov, one of the many people who crossed the Irpin River outside of Kiev, on the slippery wooden planks of the makeshift bridge after Ukrainians blew up their concrete span to slow the Russian advance. He heard gunshots as he crossed and saw corpses along the road. The Russians promised to provide a humanitarian corridor, which they did not comply with. They were shooting civilians, he said. That's absolutely true. I witnessed it. People were scared. Such testimonies will increasingly reach the world in the coming days as more people flow along fragile humanitarian corridors. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday said that 3 such corridors were operating from bombarded areas, and in all, about 35,000 people got out. People left Sumy in the northeast near the Russian border, a suburb of Kiev, and Enerhodar, the southern town where Russian forces took over the large nuclear plant. Yes, I saw corpses of civilians, said Ilya Ivanov, who reached Poland after fleeing the village outside Sumy, where Russian forces rolled through. They shoot civilians with machine guns. War is hell. Which is why I strongly oppose this war. War in and of itself is hell, always has been, always will be. And that's something we need to pay attention to with this. The fact that there's no good guy. And I'm sure, given the fact, if Ukrainians saw a civilian or somebody else involved, they would probably start shooting back at those people too. There's a reason that I don't want the U.S. involved. But part of what I see when I see things like this coming out of the EAP is number one, obviously this is going to happen. Even if soldiers have direct orders from their generals and are going to get their asses beat when they get back to the barracks for doing shit like this, some of them are going to look at this and say, I poke fun. I shoot at civilians. We are here to conquer. There's going to be that aspect of it as well. But again, they're carefully plotting these articles out, putting them out, because there seems to be, I don't want to say there is because I don't want to speak for them, but there seems to be a concerted effort by the mainstream press to try to get us pulled into this conflict. And one of the things I'm most thankful for so far is the fact that we have managed to avoid it so far. From CNN, GOP lawmaker calls Zelensky a thug and Ukrainian government incredibly evil. From Alex Rogers. So this is going to be the propaganda to try to keep Madison Cawthorn from being able to run, because we're going to, of course, use this for our political fodder in this country. North Carolina Republican Representative Madison Cawthorn recently called Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky a thug and the Ukrainian government incredibly evil, criticizing the country and its leader as Russia invades it. And, of course, as people on Twitter who have been propagandized for the last 5 years that Russia is the root of all evil in the world, hey, the 80s called, they want their foreign policy back, are now going to try to link everybody in the GOP into Russia's coffers, just like they did for the last 5 years. Cawthorn's statements were aligned with former President Trump's praise of Russian President Vladimir Putin, but in sharp contrast to the U.S., brought bipartisan support for Ukraine. Republicans immediately condemned his comments. To my colleague in the House, I would push back and say it's not Ukraine that's invading Russia, said Iowa Senator Joni Ernst. It's Russia invading Ukraine. Oh, cool. We got Lindsey Graham. Like 90% of the country with Ukraine and is opposed to Russia, added South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. So when you see a member of Congress say things like this, the one thing I want you to know is that they're outliers. Two North Carolina House Republican candidates running against Cawthorn also blasted his anti-Ukraine sentiments. I do not understand how anyone in the American public office could call Zelensky a thug while Ukraine is under such a vicious assault, said Michelle Woodhouse. Let's be clear, the thug is Vladimir Putin's, tweeted State Senator Chuck Edwards. We must unite as a nation to pray for Zelensky and the brave people of the Ukraine who are fighting for their lives and their freedom. Anything less is counter to everything that we stand for in America. I'm not going to praise either of them. I'm going to tell you that right now. I'm not necessarily going to stand against either one of them either, but I'm not going to praise either one of these presidents. Because they both suck. They really do. There's no reason for the U.S. to be over here. There is none. So, that's what we see off of that. From the Associated Press, U.S. allies to revoke most favored nation status for Russia. From Zeke Miller. President Brandon will announce Friday that he, along with the European Union and group of 7 countries, the U.S. will move to revoke the most favored nation trade status for Russia over its invasion of the Ukraine. I thought they did that years ago. Didn't they do that over the fact that Russia installed their dictator, Donald Trump? That's according to a source familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity to preview the announcement. The person said that each country would have to follow its own national processes. Stripping most favored nation status from Russia would allow the US and allies to impose tariffs on Russian imports, increasing the isolation of the Russian economy in retaliation for the invasion. What actually do we, by the way, what do we import from Russia? I'm curious, because I don't know. Oil, I know. What else? Fabergé eggs, rich people stuff. Guess what? The rich people are still going to buy it. Wheat? Do we import wheat from there? I guess I didn't realize that. Biden's move come as bipartisan pressure has been building on Washington to revoke what is formerly known as permanent normal trade relations with Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky pressed the U.S. and its allies to take action against Russia in remarks to Congress over the weekend, and follows days after the Biden move to ban all imports of Russian oil and gas products. Biden, after initially slow-walking congressional efforts to take trade action against Russia, was set to embrace lawmakers' efforts to do just that on Friday. Well, and at least this headline was honest. Remember, we had one a couple weeks ago that Russia was no longer a country. Russia and Belarus were no longer countries, according to Canada. But again, it was actually just like this. Most favored nation trading status. Another one from CNN. Biden suggests Putin and Russia's war in Ukraine responsible for soaring inflation in report. So this is our transition. We're going to go talk about inflation, which I'd love to see what you guys have to say about inflation. From Betsy Klein. President Biden on Thursday suggested the new Consumer Price Index report showing soaring inflation reflected the pinch Americans are feeling due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and other factors. Following the report, that showed consumer prices have spiked over 7.9% over the last 12 months, which we'll be talking about separately. Biden can cast blame on Russian President Vladimir Putin's aggression in Ukraine for the rising prices. Okay, that's cool. How do you account for the other 14 months, Mr. President? He added that the costs that the U.S. has imposed on Russia in response, including sanctions and a ban on U.S. imports of Russian energy, are far more devastating than the costs Americans are facing at home. And once again, the other question here is, this is the report for all of February. Russia didn't invade until the last week of February. So you're saying the inflation just jumped up in that last week and everything else was hunky-dory normal and we were at a regular 1.1% inflation otherwise? Is that what you're telling us? Again, let's talk about the other 14 months. Now, I do want to stop before we get into actually talking about the inflation and the reports that go with that, because they're going to give us numbers for this. I do want you guys to sit down, prepare your households, go get some stuff now, get some food, get some rice, get some non-perishables, get some stuff, load your freezers, because I'm anticipating that the Russia thing is actually going to affect inflation coming forward. And honestly, I would not be surprised right now to find out that we go back and see mid to high 8s coming up for March inflation, because the invasion will be on in full swing. And that's when the gas prices really started to jump. The gas prices are going to be one of the big drivers that are off of this. So that's my advice to you. Go out, and even if everything goes well, if you get a couple extra cans of beans, you'll have a really cool taco night when all this boils over. Or when all this rolls over, rather. When we get back to whatever the new normal is, you can have a really cool taco night, but go get a bag of rice, a few bags of rice, get some iodized salt, get a little bit of toilet paper, and get this all at the regular lower prices. Because it's only going to go up from here. But let's see what the numbers actually say. Starting with the USA Today, inflation climbed at its fastest pace since 1982 as consumer prices rose 7.9%, CPI report shows. from Paul Davidson. Soaring gas prices are pouring more fuel onto the flames of inflation. Inflation reached a 40-year high in February as pump prices, propelled by the Ukraine war. That didn't happen until the last week of February. Thank you for the propaganda, USA Today. Combined with rent, food, and other rapidly rising costs to squeeze Americans already struggling with sky-high costs. The Consumer Price Index jumped 7.9% annually, the fastest pace since January 1982. The Labor Department said on Thursday that's up 7.5% in January, which was nearly a 4-decade high. Gas prices leapt 6.6% and made up nearly a third of February's rise. Pump prices were up 38% from a year earlier, which were up almost 100% from a year before that, by the way. But there was an OPEC war going on at the time. As recently as January, economists had expected the price surges to ease by now as pinko pox cases declined, pump costs leveled off, and supply chain snarls at least started to unwind. Russia's invasion of the Ukraine upended that sanguine forecast by raising the threat and now the reality of reduced oil supplies from Russia and intensified supply bottlenecks. Especially for commodities shipped from that region, worker shortages continue to trigger sharply rising wages, spurring companies to lift prices to maintain profits. And the death spiral it goes. The Ukraine-Russia conflict will only further stress supply chains, including agriculture and energy, and thus continue to add inflation pressures over the coming months, Wells Fargo economist Sam Bullard wrote in a note to clients. Excluding volatile food and energy items, the so-called core prices rose 6.4% in February, a 4-decade high. On a monthly basis, overall consumer prices increased 0.8% in February, while core prices advanced 0.5%. When energy prices and supply troubles ease, March will probably represent inflation's peak as annual prices increases fall to about 3% by year-end, predicts Paul Ashworth of Capital Economics. But Kathy Bostjankic of Oxford Economics says the Russia-Ukraine war will lead to a higher near-peak inflation and slower descent through 2022 than previously envisaged. Food costs are rising. Bacon and eggs will cost you. In February, food costs increased 1% from the prior month and 7.9% over the past year. The price of bacon went up 18.8% from a year ago, chicken 13.2%, fish 10.4%, and eggs 11.4%, all notched steady monthly advances. Rent increased 0.6% compared with the prior month and 4.2% annually. Airfares jumped 5.2% from the previous month as airlines passed along higher jet fuel costs to passengers, to be expected, pushing the annual increase to 12.7%. Hotel rates rose 2.2% and 25.1% over the past year, especially probably up in the north where they're still heating their hotels. Prices increased 12.4% annually for new vehicles, 6.6% for apparel, 9.7% for household furnishing, and 4.3% for medical care services. Consumer got relief from skyrocketing used car and truck prices, which dipped 0.2%. That still left prices up 41.2% from a year ago, possibly because of the fact that there's still some bottleneck, although it has eased on new vehicles. Until the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the pandemic was the chief culprit behind the historic bout of inflation. Again, the invasion of Ukraine didn't happen until the last week of February. So this is bullshit. This is full-on bullshit. But that's what we see off of that. From the Hill, a little bit more on that. On the money, prices soar. Annual inflation hits 40-year high. From Sylvan Lane. Happy Thursday and welcome to On the Money, your nightly guide to everything affecting your bills, bank account, and bottom line. Subscribe here at thehill.com/newsletter. Sign up. Today's big deal, we're breaking down another frustrating jump in price growth. We'll also look at the latest on government funding and Ukraine aid negotiations and the IRS's plan to tackle tax filing season. For the Hill, we're Sylvan Lane. Yeah. I'm going to skip this one. Let's go to the New York Post instead. This is an op-ed? No, this is not an op-ed. Inflation is Biden's fault, and only Biden's fault. From Charles Gasparino. If you break it down, if you break it, you own it. It's pretty much what Joe Biden should be thinking right now, but of course, he isn't. No, right now, at 9:44 in the morning on the East Coast, he's probably thinking, hey man, I want a bran muffin. Come on, where are my pants? I want Major to come over here. Whatever happened to him? Yes, it's conceivable that the president, who so deservedly owns his moniker Sleepy Joe, has enough self-awareness to own up to his role in fomenting the precarious state of the U.S. economy that's sitting on a 40-year high of 7.9% and growing inflation. The problem for Biden is that inflation, according to every Wall Street CEO I speak to, is only going to get worse, no matter how much he passes the buck and blames the Russians for higher prices on everything from gasoline to food, that is, unless Sleepy Joe has an awakening and reverses his bizarre energy policies that made America dependent on despots from Russia to Venezuela. No matter how fast the environmentalists and their lackeys in the White House push for a zero carbon footprint, we still depend on oil and gas as the lifeblood of our economy. Yeah, and it's more than just the fuel that we put into our cars and trucks. It's plastics, it's polymers, it's heating. To an extent, it's forging, it's steel. Although most of that is coal, which is something else they're trying to eliminate. Inflation is theft. It siphons money, particularly from poor working and middle-class Americans. But Biden fueled it with absurd fiscal policies that included continuing to pay people not to work when the economy needed supply to meet the rising demand post-COVID. And he appointed as an accomplice Fed Chair Jerome Powell, who printed money well after the pinko pox stopped being an existential threat to the economy. That set the stage for the current inflation cycle even before Russia invaded Ukraine. Ooh, that's the one we're not going to take. Beer, alcoholic beverages, up 3.5%. Oof. It's going to cost me 3.5% more to buy a 24-pack of Natty Ice. So it'll be, what now, $4.03 instead of $3.99 for the 24-pack? I'm outraged. Biden's energy policy also handcuffed oil producers so much that gas prices, a key component of that consumer price index, were rising before the Ukraine invasion, forced Biden to ban Russian oil and gas and made $150 a barrel oil and $8 a gallon gas a real possibility in the coming weeks. So don't be conned by Sleepy Joe's excuses. He's now trying to blame oil companies for not making good on licenses to drill, but leaves out other hoops that prevent exploration and drilling. Another whopper, his people spew, that increased U.S. oil supplies will take a year or longer to hit markets and won't make a dent in prices. No, it's close. Sorry, oil is priced into the futures market, and additional future supply will keep prices from spiraling further and may in fact bring them down. There's a way out for Biden to stop kowtowing to the left and bring back energy independence at home. Someone should wake him up to the reality that inflation isn't going away and Americans will ultimately hold him accountable for the crime. So that's what we see off of that. On the financial front, Senate passes government funding bill preventing shutdown and clearing nearly $14 billion in Ukrainian aid. From Jacob Pramuk. The Senate passed $1.5 trillion in funding on Thursday to keep the government running through September and bolster both human... That's it? We're only going to September? Bitch, that's only 6 months away. Are you serious? $1.5 trillion for 6 months? Are you fucking serious? I thought this was supposed to be for a year. Holy fuck. The legislation will head to President Biden for his signature. The House passed it on Wednesday. The Senate approved the funding bill in a 68-31 vote. Congress had to approve a spending bill by Friday to prevent a government shutdown. Lapses in funding can lead to furloughs of federal workers, hinder the economy, and force the government to scale back services. I wonder if this is going on to the national debt too. I really wish, of all things, and this was the reason I stopped supporting the former president, but I really wish that when he had the opportunity, when they told him, "Oh no! You're taking paychecks. You're literally killing government workers right now. Federal government workers are going to die. They're going to lose their homes." I wish he would have called their fucking bluff. "Okay, bring me a balanced budget, and that's all I'm going to sign. Okay, no more omnibus. We're done. We're not doing this anymore." That was the reason that I stopped supporting him. He got one. I said, okay, you don't know how the government works yet, so I'll let you sign the one. But when he did the second one, after the government shut down and he opened it back up, I said, nope, you're done. And then I did eventually vote for him the second time, but it was one of the hardest decisions I've made politically in my life. Lawmakers passed a full-year spending bill after keeping the lights on for months through temporary continuing resolutions, which fund the government at existing levels. The bill passed Thursday includes $13.6 billion of aid for the Ukraine, as well as the country enters its third week of fighting off a Russian invasion. The money will go towards helping Ukrainians displaced by the Russian assault, including the more than 2 million people who have fled the country. It will also fund the deployment of military equipment and troops to the Ukraine. So there it is, your taxpayer dollars at work, going over to the Ukraine. A little bit of a more op-ed version of this from The Blaze. I just wanted to touch on this briefly. Senate sends a massive spending package to President Biden, even as Americans get hammered by soaring inflation. Yep. Let's just throw another $1.5 trillion onto the mix without balancing it out in a budget. Because it's the little people's problem. It's fine. From Alex Nitzberg. The U.S. Senate passed a massive $1.5 trillion spending package on Thursday, sending it to Biden, even as Americans suffer under the financial strain caused by skyrocketing inflation. The package passed in a bipartisan 68-31 vote. It will fund the government for the rest of the fiscal year, which runs through the end of September. It increases defense and non-defense spending compared to fiscal 2021. It also includes funding related to Ukraine. The spending package also includes earmarks. The Wall Street Journal performed a review which discovered that around $9.7 billion is going towards earmarks. An amendment from Senator Mike Braun of Indiana to cut the earmarks from the package failed to pass. The vote on the amendment was 64-35. The Senate cleared the spending the very same day that U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics released the new Consumer Price Index data that showed prices continued their disturbing upward trajectory. According to BLS, the Consumer Price Index climbed 0.8% in February. Yeah, and again, they don't care. Now, I understand full well that they're still going to spend this kind of money. I'm not so deluded as some of the MAGA people to say that if we get a balanced budget, that this kind of money isn't going to get spent. It is. It absolutely is. But what I understand of the fact is, when they have a balanced budget, they have to show on paper what they're going to spend it on, how they're going to spend it, which the omnibus tells them what they're going to spend it on too, but also how they are going to appropriate the funds to do so. And they have to stick with it. Whereas with this, it's just, okay, here are all of our pet projects. Let us spend it. And the House Plant Chief says, okay, where's Major? And speaking of floundering in inflation, I wanted to touch on this, because I said it would only take a day before I was ripping on Robert Reich again. So according to Robert Reich, the CBO just conducted a report on single-payer healthcare. Here's what they found. A government-sponsored healthcare system would boost the economy, help workers, and increase longevity. These are not progressives. These are the findings of a Republican-led federal agency. There are a lot of problems that I have with this. First off, since when is the CBO a Republican-led federal agency? Robert, Republican is not code for people who disagree with you. Let me be clear about that. But here's the biggest problem that I have with this, and I quote tweeted this, and I made a separate tweet about this, a subtweet about this as well. Here's the problem I have with this. When you... Let's look back to the vaccination thing for a second. The second that people who are touting healthcare for all, Medicare for all, the second that they started saying, if you don't get the vaccine, you shouldn't be allowed to have healthcare. The second that they said that, the conversation about Medicare for all should have been over. It should have been done. Because they showed their hand. And I pointed it out to a lot of people. They showed their hand with this. Medicare for all is control. And it was pointed out in a Discord server, not mine, but another one that I chat in usually. As was pointed out in that, hey, you didn't get the vaccine? No organ transplant for you. Hey, you spread misinformation? Sorry, you're not going to be able to go get your checkup. Hey, we're on single payer. Oh, you voted for Trump? I'm sorry. No, it turns out that your Medicare for all was declined for your cancer treatment. I'm sorry. We can't do anything about it. The second that progressives started talking about, if you didn't get the jab, you shouldn't have health care. That should have been the end of Medicare for all in this country forever. Because they don't give a fuck about taking care of people. None of them do. They give a fuck about the fact that, oh, well, I can't go to the doctor because I might have to pay a copay. They care about that. But they don't care about taking care of you. They care about trying to shut you out. Some more inflation news from Fox Business. Here's Biden's 5 career-killing lies about inflation. We'll touch on this just briefly. From Stephen Moore. Let's get the actual 5 lies. Because a lot of this up here is just review of what we saw before. Here are the 5 lies that they say. We're doing everything we can to reduce gas prices. Just the opposite. The Biden admin came in with a plan to eliminate all fossil fuel consumption and production from their first day in office. New EPA rules, cancellation of needed pipelines and LNG terminals, and open threats to bankrupt the domestic industry have led to 1 million fewer barrels a day from peak Trump and higher prices at the pump. Inflation is transitory. That was the hope of the Biden economic team, but instead inflation has accelerated in every one of the last 4 months. And inflation was less than 2% when Trump left office. Wages are rising for workers. That's actually true, but they're not keeping up with pace with the inflation. Sorry, even though wages are up 5%, with inflation at close to 8%, real take-home pay is shrinking for 3% of the for workers on average, and that's more than any year in the last decade. Inflation is due to Russia's invasion of the Ukraine. We've covered that. And electric vehicles will protect Americans from higher gas prices. Only 3% of the cars on the roads are battery operated. That means 97% of us fill up at a gas tank and are paying nearly $4.50 a gallon. And with the Tesla costing $70,000, most middle-class families can't afford that either. But that's a lie! You can get a good used electric vehicle right now for $10,000. Okay. Here's the question that, because somebody actually proposed that on Twitter, and I responded, what do you think is going to happen when everybody in the U.S. all takes your advice at once? In your utopia, everybody goes out and they all go out and buy an electric vehicle. They've seen the light in your utopia. Nobody ever wants to drive gas or a big evil pickup truck again. And they all move into the cities and they can just go hit a charging station, and there's nothing out in the rural area ever again. In your utopia, what do you think is going to happen to the used vehicle prices of those electric vehicles once everybody runs to the dealer all at the same time? And not just the Tesla dealer, but like Honda has EVs, Ford has EVs now, GM has EVs. What happens when everybody runs to those dealerships at the same time? What do you think they're still going to be $10,000? You fucking mook. So that's what we see off of that. The memo. Biden and Democrats feel new political pain on inflation. From Niall Stanage. Ooh, we're almost out of time. There's still some stuff I want to get to. Plus, we've got live chat. President Biden got a fresh jolt of political pain on Thursday with the release of new data showing inflation reaching a 40-year high of 7.9%. We still got time, though. Can we still get to 20? We got to 11. Can we still get to 20? 20 people watching on a contemporary on a Friday. The startling figure was a reminder, even amid the international crisis sparked by Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, that the fate of Democrats in this November's midterms will be decided by issues close to home. If Democrats lose control of Congress, Biden will be tightly constrained for the last 2 years of his first term. When it comes to inflation, Republicans blame Biden's earlier spending measures, including $1.9 trillion of COVID relief package passed a year ago, for overheating the economy. The steep rise in gas prices has accompanied the early stages of the war in Ukraine and gives new urgency to the issue. Even though Republicans don't want to seem lethal about economic problems, they have no doubt that the soaring cost of living gives them a big advantage in the midterms. Elections come down to kitchen table issues, said Matt Gorman, a GOP strategist and former communications director of the National Republican Congressional Committee, which again is why when I do across the board, I try to stay away from political pundits, even the internet ones, and I'd rather just get normal people like Right Girl Problems, or Mrs. RRC, or Sully Blue. Not necessarily people who analyze this all the time, like the rest of us nerds do, but people who are going to be affected by this. Kitchen table issues, that's what I try to do with this. Because kitchen table issues win elections. According to Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin's victory over Democrat Terry McAuliffe last November, Gorman added, "We saw it in Virginia. We are going to see it in the midterms. Democrats can use every trick in the book to try to blame inflation on Vladimir Putin or on corporations, but it's a problem that falls solely at the feet of Joe Biden. Democrats fairly contest that idea. No, it's Trump's fault. They say inflation was stoked last year by the once-in-a-lifetime circumstances of a world in the grip of a global pandemic. Supply chains were snarled because of any policy, or not because of any policy specific to Biden, that's actually true, by the way, but because American consumers shifted towards spending more money on goods and less on services such as restaurant meals or hotel stays. Not true. There is a factor to that, but part of what happened with supply chain is, I will admit, that a lot of the producing parts, the goods and whatnot, do come out of heavily Democrat areas, heavily union areas, which were still sitting on major shutdowns, and even the factories under heavy union leadership were sitting on heavily reduced workforces domestically. The docks in California, that's a big one of that. Heavily unionized, heavily progressive, with reduced capacity because of social distancing and masking. That was a big snarl to that. But it was localities. This wasn't specific to Biden. But the people, the buck stops with Biden, especially when we go nationally. That's one thing to pay attention to and to keep in mind with that. And the people who are close to Biden are the governors, the local legislators, the state legislators, and even the representatives and senators in the federal government that are closest to Biden. So, they're right on the fact that this isn't Biden's fault, necessarily, but the people who are following him, who are taking his direction, who swore fealty to him, are sitting up at fault at this. And I'm sure that he could, at some point, tell them all, "Hey man, cut this out!" And they probably would. Alright, let's grab one from CNN. Some relief may be coming. First signs of oil price relief. UAE says it wants OPEC to increase production. From David Goldman and Becky Anderson. The oil market has been stretched incredibly thin, with a few producers willing or able to replace Russian barrels banned by the U.S. and shunned by others. Enter the UAE, which suggested it may be coming to the rescue. The UAE's ambassador to Washington, Youssef Al-Otaiba, told CNN Wednesday that the country wants to increase oil production and will encourage Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to cartel to ramp up supply. Otaiba's comments sent oil prices dropping like a rock on Wednesday. Oil fell 12% to less than $109 a barrel. Brent crude to $111 a barrel marked their steepest one-day decline in nearly 2 years. If the UAE convinces its partners to turn on the spigots, it would mark a turnaround for the cartel, which at its meeting last week with allied producers, groups known as OPEC Plus, agreed to stick with a plan to gradually adding to the oil market, defying pressure from developed economies to do more to ease the prices. A key problem for the Saudi-led group, Russia is one of those allied producers. Last Wednesday, OPEC Plus said in a statement that it would increase output by 400,000 barrels a day in April, a small fraction of Russia's 10 million barrels per day. To crude oil production, the cartel had called the market well balanced despite oil prices having shot up 30% in the past 2 weeks. The UAE cracked down. They were one of the last holdouts. Robert Yager, vice president of energy futures at Mizzou Securities, told CNN, "Now that they said it, you can expect Saudis will say the same thing." The Biden admin banned imports of Russia's crude and natural gas Tuesday, but Europe, which still receives a great deal more Russian energy than the U.S., still has not. Still, sanctions on Russian banks and concerns about the ability to ship its oil have led to a shadow ban on the country's energy industry, drastically reducing the amount of Russian oil supplied to the global market. So, again, I don't want Biden and Democrats to win. But regardless, we need some sort of relief. We cannot go all the way to November like this. So if the UAE wants to jump back up and fill in some of the gaps, let's do this. Because American families come first. Before my disdain for the government, before my disdain for Democrats, the American people come first. And this is not sustainable. And furthermore, this is going to put a lot of people out of their homes before the housing market crashes, because they're raising the interest rates as well. This is going to put a lot of people out of their homes. So this is something to watch and pay attention to. And I really hope that they do. We need relief. No matter how you feel about the political situation, we need relief. So we'll see. And this is part of what started the drop like a rock oil prices that we saw in the summer of 2020, where around here, a couple towns over, it got as low as 91 cents a gallon. It got to 98 in the town that I'm living in. So that's what we see off of that. Let's grab one last one here. No, I want to do two more videos. One of this one, where Ian Miles Chong, who tells us that they're still laughing at you. And then I've got one a little bit closer and a different angle of video of Biden's altercation with, I believe, the union worker while he was still on the campaign trail. So let's listen to both of these.
Obviously, we have the acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack, but looking more holistically in a macro view, how does this speed up the efforts at DOE to move in more of a renewable direction, since this is going to have an impact on people at the pump?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously are all in on making sure that we meet the president's goals of getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035 and net zero carbon emissions by 2050. And, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you, clearly.
Obviously, we have the acute issues with the Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack. But
yeah, and they're laughing at you. They really are. But let's look at this one, just because I found this interesting. Thank you, Audrey K., for bringing this up here. Much better audio. Shout out to P. Grenasher for showing never before seen angle with great audio of an altercation between Joe Biden and myself. Let's listen.
Countless hours under the Trump administration, I'd like you to explain how you plan to not only keep us working, about how you intend on getting the union vote when there is a large portion of the union workers that are gun enthusiasts, and you are actively trying to diminish our Second Amendment right and take away our guns.
You're full of shit.
All right, thank you.
Now go to
guys.
shush.
Did he just say that to a constituent, to a voter?
Under the Trump administration, I'd like you to explain how you plan to not only keep us working, about how you intend on getting the union vote when there is a large portion of the union workers that are gun enthusiasts, and you are actively trying to diminish our Second Amendment right and take away our guns.
You're full of shit.
All right, thank
Now
you.
go to
Guys.
shush. Shush. I support the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. And from the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my sons hunt. Guess what? You're not allowed to own any weapon. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds.
So when you were with Beto, when you said you're going to take our guns, that
I
means
did
what?
not say that. That's
You did.
not true. I did not say that.
It's a viral video.
It's a viral video like the other ones they're putting out that are
It
simply
was
a lie.
your voice. You said that you're taking the guns.
Well,
away.
he just
Beto-
clarified it.
Beto-
Wait.
Beto- Beto-
Take the AR-14s.
Okay, this is not okay.
Hold on.
All right.
Hey, let's
You went
Don't
up
tell
and
me
did
to
the
do
same
that.
thing
I want to
you
go
did.
There's a
outside
lot
with
of
you.
guys.
You're
A lot of guys
working for me,
wanted.
man.
I'm not working. Hold on.
Thanks so much.
Give me a
Thank
break,
you so
man.
much.
Don't be such a
You're
horse
pushing
bag.
up on me.
Hey, there's a lot of
Hey.
Speak to Joe.
Look, here's the
Go
deal.
ahead, go.
Here's the deal. Are you able to own a machine gun?
Fly on a machine
I said, are you able to own one? I'm the law.
Machine guns are illegal.
That's right. So AR-15's illegal.
How is that in the machine guns?
No, it's not.
Semi-automatic.
Yeah, do you need 100 rounds? Do you need 100 rounds?
In America from handguns than there are what you call assault rifles. Why are you advocating for assault rifles when people are dying by handguns?
What a charming fellow. 81 million votes. 10 scoops ice cream. Most popular president in history. All right. So with that, we're going to head out of here for the day. But before we do, it's time for a special thank you. Time for a special thank you from everybody here because it's time to go read the live chat. And the people who have spent their time having their coffee with me every weekday morning for the past week. So I'm going to see just how far back we are on this one here because you guys have been active today. Beam me up, Mr. Scott is going up here. He's been going off. F this shit, he says. Where's the article that illustrates the Colorado residents who were killed when the Jews took over the wheat sale, Colorado? I haven't seen that one. You can always put that in the Discord. Yeah, I think Mr. Scott might have been drunk. But if there is an article for that, you can always put it in there. I generally stick to green check verified sources. So that's what we see. But let's see what you guys did throughout the week here. On Monday, and by the way, any day you come in here, I read every chat that you guys do. I don't read it on air, but I read every chat that you guys do. So everything that you guys have going on here, I know what you've said. On Monday, we had Quest Fanning, Ron Helton, Arbolt 24, Randy Crush Saga, Sully Blue, Highleaf 11, MK Ultra, Wolf 336, and Kyle Tuckers. On Tuesday, we had Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, Arbolt 24, Sully Blue, Randy Crush Saga, Wolf 336 again, and Chalaga 1984. On Wednesday, Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, Arbolt 24, Sully Blue, Randy Crush Saga, Chalaga, MK Ultra, and Linda Cloud were here. And yesterday, we had Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, Sully Blue, Arvold 24, Randy Crush Saga, MK Ultra, and Chalaga. Very, very loyal crowd. Every name was here every day, so thanks for that. And of course, see if we can get some more people in here as we go, because that's how we do things. I saw a couple other names in here today, obviously. Carbs is here. Thank you, Carbs. Beam me up, Mr. Scott. Was here first, apparently. Ron Helton is here. Calm down, everyone. Not that important. Yeah, nobody's paying you $1 million. Beam me up, Mr. Scott. It's all monkey trauma to drive us nuts, says Ron Helton. US 5287975A. Helton says Harris, the least popular candidate for president. Now she's the VP. That's insane. No, that's honk honk. Have you heard of Creep on the Moon? There's gold in them there hills. Just wait, you'll see. I've not heard of that. Fanning says her ass should be a hyphenated last name. It's what she talks about all the time. If you order a free COVID test, you can sell it to Canada for $200. Abandoning pineapples, proving the left can't meme. What's the difference between Ukrainians and Republicans? Ukrainians defend their capital. The fact of the matter is, nuke power gives access to plutonium. Yeah, I think Mr. Scott might have been a little bit on edge here right now. Yeah, I did. When we watched the video, stepped away from the desk for just a second and forgot to hit the mute button again. Back off of here, so. Quest Fang says, how do you shoot women and children? You lead less. Oof. Helton says, yeah, if the U.S. got involved, there would be massive civilian casualties. Yes, absolutely. Helton says, Lindsey Graham is one of the instigators of this war. He went to Ukraine and promised them weapons to fight Russia, which is a violation of the treaty between Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S. He then went back to the Senate and pushed the approval of weapons to the Ukraine. All illegal. Graham is a war criminal and a traitor to the American people. Yes, that is correct. Fanning says they have all kinds of layers of hyperbole about how favored the status is. And then he pointed out that, yes, we get wheat from Russia, which I didn't know. Thank you for that. We imported 2% of our oil from Ukraine. If we had cut off the wheat back in the USSR day, then they'd have a famine in short order. Would that be a holodomor? What do I think about inflation? I think you should show a silver and gold chart versus US currency. That could be arranged. We could do that. That's a possibility. C2K is here, says February inflation was because of Putin invading in all but March, you bigots. How dare you have memories more than a week old? Randy says, remember when Biden came out and told us the empty shelves we see at stores is just our imagination because his experts say that stores are stocked 90%. Ron says, I remember in the 80s when they had a failure of their wheat crops and the U.S. shipped wheat over there. They dumped it, thought the U.S. poisoned it. Well, yeah, in the Cold War I could see that. 13. Can we get 7 more while we're reading the live chat? C2K says buy silver, more easily tradable for day-to-day, gold for safety, silver for daily. Welcome in C2K. I haven't seen you here for a while, but I know you guys, you've been here before, so welcome, welcome. Fanning's got over 200 pounds of rice and plenty of vitamins. Good. Quest Fanning says forecast. You never expect the Russian invasion. You also never expect the Spanish Inquisition. C2K says invested a chest freezer. If things go real south, it's a good place to store my pet neighbor you never liked and can sell his mystery meat. You got this. My daughters aren't going to go hungry. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now. Every one of you globalists better know that. Bacon prices are crazy. Yes. Randy, you should be outraged about drinking Natty Ice. I'm from Wisconsin, dude. We'll drink whatever we can get our hands on. Especially, and I went to the University of Wisconsin too, so we'll drink whatever we can get our hands on. Fanning says Biden has added uncertainty, which is correct. That is going to affect the markets too. They can't make a decision and grow drilling in uncertain environment. Fanning, I had some Natty Ice recently for the first time, better than I remember. Then again, I had a greater appreciation of slightly less flavor-rich beers recently. Randy says, wasn't there like 500 billion that only got us 2 months last year? That is correct. But have you tried Natter Days? It's not terrible. Lemonade beer. Yeah, Natty is 8%. It's like Steel Reserve. I haven't had Steel Reserve since I was 19. Holy shit. That'll get you fucked up. Randy says, after the totally safe and legit 2020 selection, I wouldn't worry too much about your vote. That is the 2020 selection where nothing bad happened, of course. I will still vote, but I wouldn't recommend losing any sleep over it. Ron says, Natty is just a little too bitter for me. Not used to that much alcohol yet. Oklahoma was 3.2% for years. Had to buy the stronger stuff from the liquor stores. Fanning says, my family were a third of the Trump vote in our entire district, but we waited 3 hours to add to the popular vote as a rebuke to the summer of 2020 rioters. I don't think that I've ever had PBR. I'm going to tell you that right now, and that is also another Milwaukee one, so I don't know why, but I don't think I've ever had that. I was a Miller guy when I drank beer. But at some point, because I was such a godforsaken alcoholic, the beer stopped working for me because it wasn't strong enough, and I just switched to straight liquor. And then I, for the most part, stopped drinking. So now, probably a 12-pack would get me debilitatingly drunk right now. Lion's Head. I've heard of that. Randy says Republican is code for Nazis to Robert Reich. Hands off my vagina, but also make my medical decisions for me. Quest Fanning says, inflating is the rain on the ground, not whether rain is still falling. 100% gas was $3.69 in Oklahoma last night. The Love Store is $4.09. Randy says they can raise the gas tax for the poor and give tax credits to those who can afford EVs. You're getting it. Fanning says Biden does have a point about expanding the charging infrastructure. However, the market is gradually providing for charging. And yeah, I don't understand why the government has to be the one to do the charging, the infrastructure for charging. I'm sure that most of these gas stations out there are set up for 220. All the ones around here are set up for 220. I believe that's all you need for a charging station is 220. And again, maybe not around here so much, but I know at the Woodmans in Janesville, on the front row, they have EV charging stations. So it doesn't have to be out of a gas station. They've got EV charging stations in front of every store in Madison. Every single one has charging stations in front of it. It's not just the gas stations. You can literally park your EV anywhere. Park your car anywhere out there and hook up to the charging station. Go to any business whatsoever, hook up to the charging station, and grab a little charge. Again, I don't know how it costs. I don't know how that works because I don't use one because I've got a Ford with a 302. But I know I see the charging stations everywhere. Ron says if they want to cut inflation, Congress needs to make an even smaller budget. Past time to tighten the money belt. Randy says, did he add the word cartel or did the article actually use it? No, it is in there. It's been that way because I questioned the same thing, asking if it was an op-ed when they said cartel back when OPEC turned on the spigot in 2020 that led to my epic famous road trip to Florida. They said cartel all the way back then. So that's, I don't know if it's an op-ed, if it's an opinion of some of the writers out there in the mainstream media, but no, they definitely do use that term. Randy says, I like to party like a rock star. Even if we did go fully electric, we wouldn't be carbon neutral by 2050 due to the massive amounts of batteries that would need to be replaced before then. Why is this clip being shared around again? I don't know. I found it. I hadn't seen that angle before. And I thought it was funny as fuck. AR-14, go outside. Thank you, Arvolt. Biden is the asshole. C2K jumped over to DLive and started throwing the Biden stickers out, which I love. What a stupid son of a bitch. Fanning says the fire in a movie theater was actually from a dissenting SCOTUS opinion. Helton points out that you can own a machine gun. It's very expensive for the Class 3. Having read Ron Helton's chats for, well, pretty much since we started Contemporary 2 years ago, which I believe we missed our 2-year anniversary. I gotta go back and check and see what that is. Yeah, we did actually, because 520 would have been our 2-year anniversary. Episode 520. We missed it, but we've been doing this for 2 years now. So having read Ron's chats for 2 years at this point, plus what he was doing with Ed's World before that, I got this feeling there's at least 2 machine guns in the Helton homestead. I cannot confirm this, but that's just my suspicion. Let's see. Nobody even talked about that woman he called a dog-faced pony soldier was a supporter who was at the Iowa caucus. That is correct. Oh, can I read that one? I gotta think about that. But that particular case was overturned by subsequent Supreme Court case. You'll probably not get approval, though. Alright. Let's see. Let's tempt Susan, shall we? C2K says, clarification. If, when I'm yelling, calling out fire in a movie theater, it's an instruction to others to take out the leftists. Is that okay? Oof. It was nice knowing you, YouTube. Subscribe to the backup channel. C2K, Lake's swallowing firearms since Dem stole office. C2K says, if I don't get a mention, then I'm banning KTZed from mentioning the show on Matt and Blonde for a week. No, we always do that on Fridays, so... But you'll also always get a mention during the week, too. You need to compromise on guns, says Arvolt, NFA 34, NFA 38, Gun Control Act 68, Firearms Protections Act 86, Brady Bill 93, etc. The NRA has done a lousy job defending our right to keep and bear arms. Yes, that's why I don't support them. Although after last Sunday's film review, Rebecca and I are trying to decide if we ban Matt for a week. Yeah. Ron says they're predicting higher beer prices if the conflict goes on much longer, which is really going to suck for the summer. I plan on working and playing hard this summer. Ron Helton is going to be as aggressive as Beam Me Up Mr. Scott during the summer in the live chat. C2K says, fucking best not. I don't mind kids getting bombed, but you mess with my beer, then we're going to have a problem. That's right, C2K is British. I forgot that. I saw the pound symbol, and now I remember that. I paid $9.18 for a 12-pack last night. Finally felt good enough to leave the house. Is that a good price? Not up on pack prices for your side of the pond. I do remember that from when he was in here before. That's right. He is English. Or in the UK. I guess there are a number of countries out there that use the pound that aren't England. Cornwall, Scotland, Ireland. C2K says, I normally pay £6 to £8 for a 10-pack of Stella here. I haven't had Stella since I was in college either. It's not my favorite, but I haven't had that since I was in college. We might have to change that this weekend. All depends on how much the kids want after they steal it for me. I pay as little as possible, obviously. PBR is good. I've been to the brewery, by the way. And they own one of the theaters in downtown Milwaukee, too. Lion's Head is sold in cartons. There are bottles. I prefer bottles to cans if possible. C2K over here is the wholesaler, buying wholesale for the home bar. Normally good discounts for volume purchases. Banning says 6 or 7 pints of a lighter lager are a good way to spend a couple of hours. Very gradual and manageable. Liquor can get you in trouble quick. Not like booze lasts long around here. Yep. Yeah, liquor's hard on your body just for special occasions, holidays, and such. Or in this house, a Saturday. That's the hard part too, is because I can't like really go out and get hammered all the time because I work so much so often. Like most people will go out on a Friday night and go get fucking bombed, and I have to work at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. Saturday is really my only night that I can go get hammered, play video games, but then I do that, and then I don't get up for church in the morning. Shots fired! Would you like to borrow some of my daughter's tampons to go with that non-drinking habit? Shots fired. But also, yeah, don't become a drunk. Those people are boring as fuck. Well, you guys have heard some of my horror stories about dating relationships and how hard the economy hit me when I was in my 20s, and that was, at the time, the only way to cope. Now I have a microphone. Don't outrun Helton in his basement machine shop. Randy says, I keep saying that we want to support the people for war with Russia. They talk about how they're going to put an end to these Russian bots in every live chat. That's something the American people can get behind. Even if he's British, we still like C2K77. Yes, we do. Ron says, they can't tell enough lies to get my support for more wars that are not our business. I ended my military career because of lies told to get us involved in the first Gulf War. After it was over, I resigned and told them why. And C2K will get last word here and says, I was a Marine Commando for 9.5 years. I'm fine with wars. Just don't lie about why. Be honest with your troops and the public. Thank you for your service. Let's head out of here for the day. For the week? Let's do that. Although I might come back and do some video games over the weekend. Maybe I'll get a date. I don't know. We'll see. I need to go on more dates. I have been dating again. It's weird. Because when I started growing my hair for charity, I didn't think it was going to be possible. I didn't think it was going to happen. Because I was already pushing 40 and now I have long hair on top of it. But it seems to work. I don't know why. But that's enough about my personal life. Where's my outro music? A date with Shu. Yes. Go tell KTZed. Date with Shu. Let's get out of here. Should I go on a date with Shu? I think so. I think I should. All right, let's get out of here for the day and for the week here. Watch the Twitter for announcements. There may be a video game stream coming up on Saturday. I think that sounds like a good use of our time. Maybe I'll get some Stella Artois. I like that beer. It's a good Belgian beer. Maybe I'll drink some beer and play Fallout 4. Who knows? We'll see what happens with that. But we'll head out of here for the day. Thank you guys so much for coming here, hanging out during the week here. I gotta go get to work. I do have to get out early tonight, but I gotta go to work. I gotta go figure out what kind of mess I've got to deal with here today. So we will see you guys here next week for more contemporary. Monday for KTZed Redemption. That's going to be a good one because we've got some other stuff to talk about other than Ukraine. So definitely looking forward to that. And otherwise, come back and join us for any of the shows coming out here. And if there's a video game stream coming on, I would love to see more of your stuff in the chat. I'm usually a lot more interactive with the chat during the video game streams because, you know, it's otherwise just me talking to myself and saying, what the fuck, when I see something jump up at me in Fallout, whether it's a ghoul or whatnot here. So come back, hang out with me. I think that's going to be a good use of our time, really honestly. So come back, let's do that. Let's do dinner on Saturday night, I think. We'll figure that out. We'll go with that. So we'll see you then. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.